What's going on, man? We're back with another episode. It's March Madness, and you're watching I'm Just Saying. I'm Jeremiah.
And Gabe, so I'm here in
Uh,
Indianapolis. I'm here in my hotel lobby, trying to film this pod for you. Uh, but I want to get to what it looked like from my end, but just explain to me your initial thoughts from what it looked like across the screen.
man, on TV, I just knew as we talked before, Tennessee cannot start slow in any of these games they play against these high teams, especially going into it with the narrative of, yeah, lost to Kentucky. You got swept by Kentucky this season. Then Zakai flipping off the UK sign in Rep Arena in the round of 32 after they won. Who did they beat? Who was that? I don't
UCLA.
Yeah, UCLA. After that UCLA win, he was seen in the back, taking a picture of him flipping off the Rupp Arena. I mean the UK sign at Rupp Arena, and then there was a bunch of talks pregame saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna handle business. We saw what he did. You just got swept. You haven't beat us in a long time." So I knew the stakes would be high and the energy would be high, and that's exactly what happened. Tennessee controlled the game. I feel like the whole 40 minutes elite defense, you know what I'm saying? Jamal Meshack, we keep talking about him. Both of them, him and Zakai, defensive player of the year finalists nationally. Uh, when you have the best defense in America, and then defense leads to offense, you just can't be beaten. I feel like that was just one of these games. I feel like Tennessee has been a better, like I feel like they're a better overall team than Kentucky. Kentucky just had Tennessee's number, shooting 10 threes both games, 50% from three. But they limited them. I'm pretty sure they shot, if I believe, like they still
They shot
shot 40%, but only six threes instead of 10 for 21, you know what I'm saying? But it was a really good game, and I like the high energy. Zakai was in it because, the narrative around the picture. Chaz was in it. Jamal was in it. Dubai, I feel like these don't play great minutes. We've been on and off about him the whole season. The trio of Jordan Gainey, Chaz, and Zakai came through. I think they combined for 51. So that's a beautiful game from the Vols. What do you think?
Yeah, it was interesting. Like I said, Tennessee gets the 13-point win over Kentucky, 78-65. And I think what you were saying is true. Like, yeah, it was like a 13-point win, but I think it got up to as much as 19 at one point, and then very late in the second half, it was like flirting between like 16 to 18 points like the whole time. And they kind of, Tennessee maybe got a little sloppy, and they were able to kind of bring that point total down. But for the most part, Tennessee was in control the entire game, largely to the point. I mean, I kept looking over to the guy that's next to me as I kept saying, like, oh, I've seen Tennessee blow worse. I mean, we just watched Tennessee Tech, or not Tennessee Tech, excuse me, Texas Tech blow a 16-point lead or Arkansas blow, forgive me, Arkansas blow a 16-point lead to Texas Tech just a few nights ago. And so, at the end of the half, when Tennessee was kind of getting things rolling, I remember thinking, like, oh, there's a lot of ball left, a lot of ball left to be played. But really and truly, if I could say one thing about the environment, one thing about the atmosphere, one thing about just seeing the team up close. And it might be something that a lot of people, especially some of the local Tennessee media, are scared to say. Tennessee's playing really good basketball right now.
Really great
They've
basketball.
played some top tier basketball of any team in this tournament. Like I said, like we were saying, we just got done watching the Florida and Texas Tech game, and again, Texas Tech was ahead, and then they blew that lead, and Florida came back, and Walter Clayton Jr. proved why he's the best guard, or one of the best guards in the country. But you and I were discussing off pod of how Florida likes to flirt with those wins and losses so much that eventually they might get got. Maybe they would don't, but at the same time, they like to flirt with it. Um, Auburn last night kind of had to rally and kind of shake themselves back, right? Tennessee is their worst game was against Wofford in the first round. That was the worst that they look. They played one of their best games of the season against UCLA, dominating on the boards, improving in almost every facet of the game. And then they come back against a team that they got swept in the regular season, which we said before. Rick Barnes has only been swept by a team he's played three times once. It's really hard. Everybody was saying it's really hard to beat a good team three times. Statistically, the more talented team is going to win more often than not. And Tennessee showed why they're the more talented team. I mean, I think the biggest thing that they did was they forced Kentucky to play their game and not playing to Kentucky's game, which I think they had done the first two matchups. But even when you look at the numbers, it's I hear, for example, like Kentucky shot almost 50%. They shot 49%. Tennessee shot 50%. They were 25 and 51 field goals. Tennessee was 29 and 57. So it's like Tennessee was 26% from three. They shot 5 of 19, right? Like they didn't have a really good. I remember saying before, like Chaz is probably not going to go 0-7 like he did in Lexington. He went 1-5 from deep. He didn't do that much better. But it was if you watch the game, it was such a well-rounded game. Everybody was getting involved and everybody was scoring. I think he had 4 guys in double digits. Chaz Lanier had a much better game, even though he did not so much from outside, but we can get into that. But overall, Tennessee just dominated yesterday, and they've dominated UCLA, and they've dominated good competition. They have a really big game ahead of them tomorrow against Houston. But I think the same Tennessee team that has shown up the past 3 weeks and even parts of the tournament, the same Tennessee team that beat Auburn, I think they could be any team in the country. What do you think?
Yeah, they're super hard. And with Zakai, Zakai being the crux of this team, being Rick Barnes' guy, he's playing a hell of a style of basketball, and I love it. It's so gritty. It's so Zacchaeus. He had 18 and 10 with 0 turnovers, and it's still he was guarding. And you remember when we talked about it in class after class with Gene, I was like, if they guard Kobe Brea the way that every team in the SEC has guarded Chazin this whole season, they're going to win this game. It's going to be nice. Kobe Brea ended 1 of 7, 1 of 4 from three for only 5 points. Now that led to Lamont Butler having 18 or 7 to 10 shooting and 4 or 5 for three. But the main score, how important Kobe Bryant is to that Kentucky style of offense with those crazy threes that he makes. That was a beautiful, beautiful game plan by Coach Barnes. And also, going back to my point, like I said, Jordan Gainey is the most important scorer for the Vols. He had 16 off the bench on 50% shooting. You can't ask for more from him. That is a beautiful game of basketball. And the Vols are just hot. They're probably one, if not one of the hottest teams in America, probably
They're
behind
playing
Duke.
some of the cleanest basketball in the nation. Seriously, they are really doing it. Back to Zakai, like, and to address your point earlier, like I had wrote down my Wi-Fi wasn't working because I'm dumb and didn't bring an Ethernet cord, and so we're on public Wi-Fi over at Lucas Oil Stadium, and so my Wi-Fi on my computer is just not working at all. And so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do old school and take handwritten notes, and I'm writing on my notes. I remember watching the teams go out, watching them like, you know, it's just all Kentucky fans or 4-1 Kentucky fans, just blue everywhere. Obviously, it's a much easier trip for them, and they're calling out the starters. And I remember writing in big all cap letters on the top of my paper, Zakai, like win or lose, has to have a good game because of and I love it. I love the kind of the trash talking. I loved him flicking off the UK sign. I loved all that because that's just fun sport. I mean, not sportsmanship, but that's just showmanship, I guess is the better word, where it's just like it's a rivalry. Everybody loves the rivalry. Why not play into it? And so I loved it. But at the same time, like, he had to back that up, and he did 100%. He knew he was going to break the assist record. Like that was a given. He did it on a pretty nice alley oop, which kind of like put the cherry on top of it. Like you're saying, 7 of 12 shooting from the field, 10 assists. I mean, he's averaging so far almost 15 and 10 assists in this postseason. Like he passed Sean what Toey, I think. Forgive me if I'm butchering the name. But that was a record that stood for 40 years. And not even to get into like his story and what he means to this program, but Sakai, I think Tennessee goes as far as Sakai takes him, honestly. That he has done so much for this team, both defensively, the way that he runs the offense, even being a spark like outside. You saw the play where he just pulled up after that. The Felix gets the points. So Chaz misses the bucket. Felix tips it back in. Chaz like stumbles, gets up, tips the ball back, gets it to Zakai. And what does Zakai do? With an open lane, open 3 point shot. There was like one guy down there who's like still getting up. I don't remember who it was. He could have easily went in and driven in and maybe just kind of did a little floater, a little layup. And he just pulls up. And I asked him after the game about it. He just said he was feeling it. He just knew it was going to go in. That's just the kind of night that he was having. I loved everything about it. You saw there was a play where I think he got a turnover, something like that. He's chest bumping. He's laughing at him. He was kind of being a little villain last night, and I loved every second of it.
Yeah, that was a funny. And speaking of that play, man, like I said, I'm watching from TV, so I don't really know what's going on. I see the putback. Chaz falls down,
Mm-hmm.
so on his back and out of bounds. The TV didn't even show it because they ended up zooming in on the fan. I don't know if they zoomed in on the fan or on the team's reaction from the putback, but they ended up, I'm pretty sure it was a fan. They ended up zooming in on the fan. And then all of a sudden, I work SEC North VFL film, so I know the like crux in the behind the scenes. So it was just funny. They're zooming in on the fan. Then all you see is the shot go, like you see like Zakai mid air and the three going in. Like, how did he even get the ball? I still didn't even see the
I
full
could
play.
not believe he took the
Yeah,
shot.
yeah. It was just funny, like, and like you said, I could tell he was just so in rhythm that he like knew it was going in, wide open right wing. a beautiful shot. But speaking of,
Yeah, I just
it's
wanted to, I
beautiful.
wanted to get it like clear. Chaz Ziegler is averaging 15 points and 9.3 assists this NCAA tournament. I
It's
mean,
beautiful basketball.
that is perfect basketball. And then his fellow guard Chaz Lanier is averaging 22 points a game, had another good scoring game. And particularly, what I want to mention about this scoring game, and I want to hear your thoughts about it specifically, was the way he was able to adjust when the 3-point shots weren't falling. Like, how did that look to you?
We've talked about that a bunch about Chaz not getting too into trying to shoot his way out of slumps because I feel like he struggled with that a lot in in SEC play when those teams being really physical with him, grabbing his jersey. Oh, I got to get myself out of this slump. Which I know Coach Barnes does want Chaz to shoot a bunch of shots, but there are ways to open up that 3-point look for you. If you can get the ball, run off the screen, drive past the big, if he helps too hard, and you can slash the paint, get a layup. Or he's been really good with the pull up jumper. I think probably Jordan Gainey's been working on that with him. That pull up midi, but he's getting better at that too. Just not settling because you're a sharpshooter for sure. You're an open shot maker for sure, but not settling. You have to work your way inside out rather than work your way outside in. And I feel
For
like
sure.
he's been doing a really great job, and that's why you've seen so much success from him. Until when he even had successful game, 17 points, not the best shooting night, but he's
No, he wasn't super efficient, and admittedly he didn't have a good first half. But if anybody who watches Tennessee basketball knows that Chaz Lanier's a one half guy, and luckily he had his half in the second, right? He was able to. I remember one time watching the game and then looking up the score, thinking chat like, oh, Zakai's doing really well. Jordan Gainey's he's getting those shots to fall, and then next thing I look up and I just kind of noticed that Chaz was like leading everyone in scoring, and I was like, he quietly kind of had 15, 16 points. I had no idea where they came from. It felt like he was just missing all of his shots, and then he was able to knock down like 3 or 4 at one little stretch, which like he always does of little mid rangers. He was going in, he was driving in, which like I love it. I think he's kind of figured out that that's like a thing he can do. He can just kind of
yeah.
go in and use his long arms and kind of actually get at him. And I think it'll be really important tomorrow when you're placing another team who's also really great at defending the three, very physical, very defensive minded like Tennessee is, for Chaz to know that he can get his shots in other areas and kind of be able to maybe even adapt to what the defense gives him. Because at first, like, and still to a little certain extent, but that's still like was kind of always an issue. Is you kind of felt like if the shot wasn't there for him, he really couldn't create it. And I feel like the past couple of games and in the past couple of weeks, honestly, he's really done an exceptional job at kind of like diversifying his scoring and being able to like drive in. I think that like that pull up jumper, like you said, is really coming together. And then of course, I mean, he didn't have a great game, but his 3-point shot is always going to be a threat.
Yeah, and one more thing I want to point out before we moved on to this preview, this rebounding. I think Rick Barnes even said something about it post lock in the locker room saying, let me make sure I'm not saying this, but Felix having 11 rebounds total and 7 of them being offensive, that is beautiful hustle. Felix had a great unsung hero game too, 4 or 5 and finishing his lobs, putbacks and stuff like that, and having 7 offensive rebounds. That's winning basketball. You have to be tough. Rick Barnes has talked about it really the whole season, but he said he's going into every game preaching toughness, 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 and they're definitely gonna have to carry it on into this game to get to the Final Four versus Houston. What do you think about that? Like, I want to hear your thoughts on that.
Defense, defense, defense. Obviously, I don't want to be the only person or I don't want to be the latest of many people to point out the fact that these are the two best defensive teams in the nation. In fact, there's 3 out of the 4 Naismith Defensive Player of the Year finalists are going to be in this game tomorrow.
Isn't it true?
Joseph Tugler, Jemai Meshach, Zakai Ziegler, Joseph Tugler, obviously. I think if I want to say Jemai and Zakai both lead. I think they're like 1 and 2 in defensive box plus minus and like defensive win shares, because the others like one's 1 and one's the other 2. Obviously, Zakai back to back SEC Defense Player of the Year, and Joseph Tugler, another great defender who's I mean one of many, but also one in particular that's going to give a lot of trouble to the Vols. And I I think the way that I kind of posed this question to some of the players today when I asked them is I went in there and of course everybody wants to talk about like the potential for Tennessee to make the Final Four, something that's never happened in program history. It's the second back-to-back Elite Eights, first time this ever happened. It's only the third Elite Eight in program history. Obviously, again, second under Rick Barnes, which we could talk about later when we get to that portion of his legacy. But obviously the Vols were in this position last year. They ran into Zach Edey's Purdue. Dalton Connect gave it everything they had, but they ultimately ended up coming up short. If you think for a lot of Vols fans, they kind of felt like it ended once they got that draw to Purdue. But I think tomorrow is a very, very different story. I think a lot of people are very split on this game because of the way that these two teams are so similar. Like if you look at all their numbers, especially the defensive numbers, they're like the exact same. And so it does feel like they're going into another coin flip game. What do you think would be the biggest like what do you think would be the biggest storylines going into tomorrow's game as far as Houston and Tennessee specifically?
I wanted to say defense, but you already kind of hit on that. Let's see. I think it'll probably be just a battle of the guard play, honestly, like the battle of the backcourt. Knowing just I've just spoken with we talked about this off pod, just how deep that backcourt that Houston has. How they have Uzan could go get one. Cryer's their best scorer. He averages like 15 and great shooting. He had a rough game last one, but he can get hot at any moment. Like pretty sure he had 30 points that I have Emmanuel Sharp. He's a shooter. He's just scary. Like I feel like whichever backcourt has the better game will win this game. Or like whether not even just scoring a ball. If Zakai has 10 points, but he has 12 assists, 1 or 2 turnovers, maybe zero, and he controls the game and plays defense the way I think he will, and the way he will go into this because they're playing this Final Four run is really for Rick Barnes because I'm being pretty sure Meshack said it there when they came home for rest before the Sweet 16 Elite Eight, but he was like this run is for Rick Barnes. So I feel like those veterans, Meshack, Gainey, Zakai, the guys that have been there are going to play their hearts out, and I think that's going to be the biggest headline going into it. Ziegler versus Cryer. I think you wrote that down too, but I think
Yeah, we can go and I do have some key matchups that we can look at. I'll just run through a small list of some of what I think is Houston's strength. So obviously they're 3-4, another 30-win team, another team that's in the sweets that went to the Sweet 16 for 3 straight seasons, like Tennessee, or not like Tennessee, yeah, like Tennessee. Sorry, 3 straight Sweet 16s. They're in that group. One of 3 schools, I believe. LJ Cryer is averaging 15.3 points per game on 40% shooting from 3. I think a lot of people have a notion that Houston can't score. I don't think they're the best scoring team, but I do think that this team is a better offensive team than some of those past Houston teams, and specifically maybe that Final Four 2021, that 2021 Final Four run that they had. Houston's adjusted defensive efficiency ranks first in the nation. They're an incredible rebounding team. I'll get to a little more on that. And they're also just the simple statistic is they're holding teams to 37.9% from the field. It's the best defensive mark in college basketball, with Tennessee not being far behind in just about all of these numbers. Yeah. I don't know. I hesitate to I think, again, going back to Vols fans and maybe Tennessee media and just the talk around Tennessee is they kind of have Houston kind of being, in my opinion, maybe a little bit, definitely not overrated, but maybe a little bit more of a juggernaut than they are. I mean, I think it's safe to remind people that Tennessee is ranked ahead of Houston for almost the entirety of the year, except for that final little stretch there. So I think there's definitely precedent to believe that Tennessee can, and some might argue should win this game. And I do mean that when we get down to the matchups, right? You have Zakai Ziegler versus LJ Cryer. The kind of battle of the guards, battle of the ball handlers, a battle of these, I guess, offensive leaders. Maybe they do it a little different ways. Obviously, Zakai is at his best when he's passing the ball, and Cryer is at his best when he's shooting the ball. But I think that is a matchup that if you ask a lot of people, especially people who, maybe are a little more SEC biased. I wouldn't say I'm SEC biased, but I definitely respect the competition level of the SEC. You know what I mean? To where like game in and game out, they're playing such tough competition. Not to hate on the Big 12 or anything like that, but Zakai Ziegler has proven to hold his own and play better than all the best guards in the SEC, whether it's Walter Clayton Jr. or Mark Sears or whoever, right? Like Zakai, Josh Hubbard, like Zakai has always held his own. And so Zakai can win that individual matchup, right? If Lanier can win his matchups on the outside, if he can find open shots. I asked him today, I was like, what are the talks about trying to get you free, trying to get, people from not tugging your jersey and trying to get around it. And he said, oh, they've been talking about it. And he even joked, him and I was talking with him and Igor, and they even joked they're not gonna, they didn't want to tell me because they didn't want to get, they didn't want, they said Houston might see this, our little pod. And I was like, well, unlikely, but they clearly have been working on it specifically for this team to find ways to get a guy like Chaz open and to get the 3-point ball falling. So I don't know. I think you're like what you said is nail on the head. I think the defense might offset each other because they are so good defensively. I think those two defensive uh units might offset each other, and then I think it becomes a battle of the front courts and who can kind of get the most scoring. And I think at that point, Sky Ziegler, Chaz Lanier, and Jordan Gainey should be able to overcome. But what do you think?
I agree with everything you said, and I'm just going to reiterate what I've said in previous pods and what we talked about. Foul trouble, especially from the
Big,
bigs, because,
huge
like I said,
factor.
both being scrappy teams, fouls are going to happen, but the bigs have to know when it's time to jump at a certain ball, when it's time to swat at a certain ball, when it's time to be overly like zealous to go get a ball because the rotation is not as deep. Like I feel like that has always been the one weakness I said that I could see Tennessee losing is just lack of depth and because of being tired of foul trouble. And that's the one way I could see this game going bad for sure, just foul trouble because Igor's been having trouble staying in games early, but K has came in and played big minutes with high energy matching. I feel like he really feeds off Zakai. Him and Zakai have a good relationship, so I feel like they really feed off of each other. But K has been playing good minutes. Felix played a pretty good game as well, knowing when to foul and stuff like that.
I
But
think Felix has made a lot of improvements in that area,
yeah,
especially even since the SEC tournament when there were times. I mean, I did write down that there were portions of the Kentucky game yesterday where Igor had to sit with 3 fouls early in the second half, and that I think what you said is completely true. I think fouls are going to be one of the biggest X factors in this game. Um, but even to speak to Felix, I think he has kind of improved in that area, especially since the SEC tournament when there were multiple games that he couldn't even him and Igor couldn't even be on the court together because of being able to share the fouls. But what do you think Tennessee's keys to victory would be in this game? Like they win this game because of what?
um, one I would say limited turnovers. I've seen Houston. They did it to Purdue before they did to Purdue. Just speeding them up, making them play the game that they don't need to play. Like they not even just turnovers. There could be like bad shots. Those really count as turnovers in my eyes because why are you shooting bad shots? Or why
Agreed.
are you doing this? Why are you doing something that you don't normally do that you haven't done the whole season? I feel like Houston, because they're the number one defense in America. Houston has they do a really good job because they're well coached and also are hustlers. They do a really good job of making teams play the way that they don't want to play. And Tennessee doesn't commit as a lot of turnovers as Zakai is able to relax the game. Gainey is able to relax the game, where Tennessee is able to set up sets and do what they need to do. That'll be a key to victory. And I also think not even just winning the rebounding category, but keeping it close. If it's a 40-36 rebounding, cool. If it's a 40-28, then that's a problem because most of that means there's a discrepancy in offensive rebounding. And I feel like
Tennessee out rebound. Yeah, I
yeah,
was just gonna add to that point to like how your point Tennessee out rebound, like the point of like all like the numbers like Tennessee and Florida or in pardon Kentucky shooting both around 50% from the field yesterday. Tennessee shooting significantly worse from three yesterday. They both shot around the same from the free throw line, the same percentage from the free throw line, but Tennessee out rebound Kentucky 37-26. I mean, they got 16 offensive boards to Kentucky's 9 offensive boards, right? So I think you're definitely right in that aspect where that could just really be the tell all of the game is who wins the glass. In fact, I joked I think the players were being media trained before our breakout rooms today when I went to practice because I asked all of them, is my exact question. I said, if all things offset or all things equal, what is Tennessee's what separates Tennessee from Houston? Everybody's talking about how similar they are, but what separates them? And they said rebounding. If they can rebound which wasn't really an answer, but they all said if they could rebound the ball, if they could get on the glass, if they can dominate the boards, then they win that game. And they were all confident in that. And I think that that's going to be a huge point of emphasis and something that the team has struggled with. It's not a given that even though they've improved, it's not a given that they're going to continue to man the boards like they were against, UCLA or Kentucky. So I think that'll be the biggest stat to me. What else do you think would be Tennessee's key to victory?
Chaz has to have a good game.
You think
I
so?
feel I feel like I know what I'm going to get from Zakai. I know I'm going to get the hustle defense from Meshack. Meshack is going to play like it's his last game.
They're going to put him on Crier too, which I
Yeah,
think would be huge. I think because that's their biggest 3-point threat. And I think if they limit his 3-point attempts by just telling Jemai, like, hey, you go and just smother, as a Crier all day, like that's your position. Um, Tennessee could be working, but continue. Sorry.
yeah. I feel like I know what I'm going to get from Gaining. Gaining's going to give us at least double digits. He plays big minutes. But Chaz definitely has to have a good game. Uh, Hopefully, like you said, they didn't want to tell us, which is be something cool. Maybe you can ask them about it after the game. Hopefully after a win. But hopefully we can see the tell difference of when a team is up on you, grabbing your jersey, hitting you, side swiping you, whatever they're doing to you. When a team is doing that to you, Chaz, how do you react?
Yeah.
And if Chaz gets that 20, because Tennessee is like 20-0 when he scores 20. If he gets that 20, then I'm confident. I'm confident with a win for sure.
Technically the number he needs to get is 18 for Tennessee to be undefeated. I think they've moved to 18 or 19-0 whenever he scores 18 or more points. I agree with you, and in fact, I will add by saying I think we have officially gotten to the point in the tournament where your best players have to be your best players.
Best player gonna be your best player.
Your big stars have to show up. I think we've officially completely moved past the point where Chaz could get away with having like 13 points on 39% shooting from the field and 28% shooting from three. You know what I mean? Like, but then Tennessee still by their coasting off their defense and maybe, maybe Zakai and Jordan Gainey both combined for 40 something points. They've officially, I think, moved past that point. Chazanier is your best scorer. He's your best 3-point shooter. He's your best offensive threat. And from here on out, the farthest Tennessee wants to go, I think Chaz has to be the best player on the court every single time. And I think it starts tomorrow. And I completely agree with you. I think it starts with how he reacts to that defense. And it's going to start early. We've said this every single time Chaz has had a really nice game in conference play. He gets one to drop early. He starts to feel himself, and then he gets his confidence and he starts smiling and he starts, getting a little more aggressive. And so I think being able to take what the defense gives you and work with that, I think that'll be the key to Tennessee overcoming because I just really think those defenses are so good. I think they're gonna offset. I don't think it's gonna get sloppy. I think it's just gonna get very, very physical. And we're gonna see this game come down to a couple of just really big
Yeah.
plays, right?
Those line
It's gonna
plays.
yeah, it's gonna come down to a couple of one-legged fadeaway mid-rangers from Jordan Gainey. It's gonna come down to a couple really tough, physical finishes through contact around the basket from Zakai. It's gonna come down to, a 3-point, shot clock buzzer from Igor in the corner, right? It's going to come down to one of these plays because I think their defenses are so good. I have a hard time believing either one of these teams is just going to find a rhythm on offense, to be honest with you. And then in that case, I think your best playmakers have to step up and make plays in that moment. And then your best defensive playmakers, your Jemai Meshack, he doesn't put up a lot of points, but still compacts the game. Even D Stone coming in and giving a good defensive effort. That's in limiting Houston's best playmakers, obviously, just a sidebar, never leave the inbounder on a play. If there's 2 seconds left on the clock, don't leave, a la Purdue. But yeah, I think tomorrow and really from here on out is just going to be your best playmakers making plays. And I hate to sound so generic, but really sometimes basketball just kind of boils down to that because I think it's going to be a game of margins. And I don't see Tennessee being Duke and beating some of the best teams by 20 plus points out here anymore. No, I think everything's going to be a grind for Tennessee. But I think that they have all the pieces, and I think they're humming right now. Can you say just one kind of final little tidbit about what tomorrow means for Rick Barnes, win or lose?
Legacy. Um, feel like I feel like Barnes gets his respect because he always has a good team, top 25, a lot of top fives. They do well in the SEC play, but they never can get over the hump to become, oh, they're the best four teams in America. They're the best. They went the whole season, played well, but they really showed up when it came against the other great teams in America.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Barnes, if he hasn't cemented himself already, I feel like he has, but Barnes cements himself as one of the all-time greats, regardless of if he has an NBA caliber player or not. I can coach and I can win those tough matchups that a lot of people count us out. I think he did that against Kentucky. A lot of people probably thought. I saw a lot of like predictions saying Kentucky, but and I think he's an underdog in this one as well. I feel like he submits himself as a great coach with this win and with this being the program's first chance at a Final Four. Coach Moore is a GOAT, man. He's a GOAT.
Yeah, a lot of stuff on the line for Tennessee tomorrow, win or lose. Thank you, Jeremiah, for another great pod. And I don't know how many of these we might have left, but for sure we have tomorrow, and I can't wait.
Hopefully we have, what would that be like? About 4 more?
Yeah, 3 or 4 more.
Eddie?
Look forward to it.
Yeah, but we'll be back. Hopefully with a win. Hopefully not saying goodbye to the fans or whatever who watches it. But we appreciate everyone who does tune in. Like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Let us know if you want us to speak about anything in particular. Follow the Instagram too. You know we're doing pretty good over there. Gabe been getting us some good content. The Instagram is pod_I'm just saying. But I'm Jeremiah again.
And Gabriel.
We appreciate you all for watching. Peace.
The thing